So for this breakout group activity, for which we've allotted 45 minutes, you would be placed randomly into a discussion group, and there's one discussion question. If the Revelatory Commission were here right now, like they were for the forum, what questions do you have for them? What questions would you ask the Revelators today? I've got mine ready to go.
Why?
Now, so in your breakout group, select a facilitator on your own and someone to help the facilitator take notes. Because what we would really love to have is your breakout group's list of questions. And this would be questions that you would like the Revelators to answer for us. Welcome back. We are going to hear reports from our Zoom breakout groups.
One second. Everybody here in the forum room, it's hard for the people on Zoom to hear when we are anything but really quiet.
Yeah, we have very sensitive microphones.
Gotten a couple of messages from our attendees in 2D that they can hear every little rumble in here. So out of courtesy for our hybrid meeting, I'm going to ask everybody to be quiet.
Thank you. And we're ready for the report from breakout group number 1 from Zoom. Take it away.
Who is that? Oh, Zoom.
Zoom. Do they know they're number 1?
I think my group is 4.
You can go first anyway.
Jim, I think our group was 1.
Oh, Leela.
Okay, Leela.
No, I'm not reporting. Jim is reporting.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know we were number 1. So we had quite a lively discussion. I don't know how you want this, but I'll just kind of give you an overview. And if you want more detail, I'll give it to you. We touched on 48 chromosomes versus the scientific 46. We touched on one global language, when that was going to happen. ET visits and the amount of natural disasters that occur. Why are they seem to be more frequent and more calamitous? And also the climate crisis. How would they help us with the global warming issue and the shifting of the poles even, and total disruption of our planet in that regard? Okay, then we went on to touch upon Caligastia and if he was involved with the split up of the fellowship and the foundation. And then, let's see, we kind of ended with a large discussion, which we had a week ago in our Zoom study group in Denver. And that was an edition of the book that is more gender neutral, more gender correct. And let's see, then we went to, are there any things we can do as far as race improvement? What steps can we take to improve the races? And lastly, are there any plans to add to the Urantia book? Are there additional papers that would be revealed at this time? So that's what we covered. And it was, we kind of had a middle ground. You know, people would have a very extreme view about a topic, and the group would kind of pull that in and include, you know, the Revelators' difficulty in doing this task, and you know that they had a plan to follow, and they were pretty accurate in following the plan that was given to them. So that's what we did. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have a wonderful recorder, do you have any questions on the questions?
No, I got the questions, but I just would like to request that if somebody has a duplicate question, they don't need to repeat it.
Yes, you don't need to repeat duplicate questions. What you might do as a reporter is you could just mention, if you also, a good example might be had a question on climate, we could keep track of the number of times a topic is mentioned, but you don't have to go into detail about your question to save time.
Okay, good.
All right, group number 2.
Susan Lyon was our recorder, so I'll ask if she would be kind enough to read those questions for the group.
Now is the test to see if I was really typing, right?
Yeah.
All right, so our first question referenced paper 195 about high gear spiritual performances of the church and that they must await a new revelation. The question is, do they mean this revelation or a future revelation? Since the reference was before the book was even published. And a follow-up question to that was, what is meant by high gear spiritual performance of the church? Okay, the next question was, what is the percentage of completion of the 7 super universes? And then it went to the subject of Michael's return. Michael, why are you returning? And how he stays when he returns? What? Oh, I'm too fast.
Trudy's trying to write, so.
No, but you skipped out a little
Yeah.
bit. So could you repeat, please?
Sure. It goes back to the return of Michael, and the questions are for that subject. Michael, why are you returning? How long will he stay when he returns? What form will he take when he returns? And another reference was that he intimated on several occasions he might return in connection with a planetary crisis. Why didn't they ask what kind of crisis he was referring to? What would cause him to return out of step of normal process? Okay, and then there's a reference about personality survival. There are 2 personality factors. The memory transcripts are with the adjuster, and the immortal soul is in the keeping of the destiny guardian. So who is sleeping? Who's taking the nap when it's about us sleeping? Sleeping survivors. Okay, and then we switch to personality as far as genetics. And I think this is a little bit different because there's some research on genetics. And the question is, are genetics a part of personality? Does personality come through genetics as well as being a gift from the Father?
That's interesting.
I think
Good one.
consensus in the group that everyone would like a better definition of personality. So what do you mean by personality? Please.
That's your identity.
I had a question about animal person.
Okay with it.
Your thumbprint, that's what you said.
Then we have a question about what happens to animal personalities. And I brought up a quote in paper 46, section 7.5. And could this be applied to pets? It's what they use for spornagia. The 5 adjutant mind equivalates to a totality or 6th reality level. And it's a factor which persists as an experiential identity. Could this apply to pets? There was a reference to a next order of beings. What are the next order of beings to be developed that they were referring to? Prayer and worship. We are introduced to the 7-fold, but what is our relationship with the Ancients of Days and the Master Spirit? Does it take the form of prayer or worship? And the last question Where is Jesus' soul? They say they don't know. Why don't you ask Jesus? Anyway, that's it for us. We're set for group 2.
Thank you, group 2. Ready, group 3.
Is there any way we can comment on that, or we just want to roll along?
I think we'll have comment on questions or questions about questions once everybody's reported.
Okay,
We'll see how our time goes.
okay.
Group 3.
They don't know. They don't know who it is.
Group 4. Group 5.
Hi, I'm group 4.
Okay.
Richard Jernigan was one of those.
I'm not sure we are, but somebody said we were. Richard, I think. And I'll just kind of run down the list of things. There were issues about why the gender issues, language, women, the influence of women, why the things weren't written differently, and the changes over the last decades since the book weren't anticipated, but not only about women, but about race, eugenics, caste-like issues. There was a question about how much of our text is very specifically in relation and response to that particular group, that cohort in the 1930s. It seems interesting that maybe they're listening to us right now with all of our questions. There were people who wanted to know how long until life, when are we going to be settled? What keeps us thinking it will be hundreds of thousands of years? And how can you help maybe shorten that? There were references to the parts in the book that discussed that. There were multiple questions about the differences in scientific development since the book was presented or the papers were presented, and how to deal with those, and how do we amend those things. There was something in there also about anticipating or dealing with the fact of the changes in worldwide civilization, and something about a hope for an improved quality of thinking. There were questions about the rapid spread of the book or its information and teachings on the internet, and how that can be less intimidating than the entire book. There were quite a few questions for thoughts or advice regarding the importance of living the teachings more than spreading the book. Teachings of the master more important to share than the book. How to live our lives to facilitate our spiritual growth and the development of science, of spiritual insight, sort of as we pass by ministries, more than this book stuff. But we ended our discussion, which I just liked, without questions, but one of us commenting, not known at the time, so the book did do some of that thing that we're now talking about or asking about, and that same person said the whole section on Christ is excellent. So I just add those because I think it's nice to compliment them as well as to ask more questions.
Thank you, Julia.
I can report group 4's.
Wonderful.
Okay. So we did have a lot of the same questions as some of the other people, maybe with a, nuance difference. So there were several questions about
kind of are we on the right track? Are there any things that the Revelators would like us to do, methods to reach out to people that we're missing? Hopefully simple ones. And how do we reach out to people who are believing that God is wrathful and punishing? How do we move forward as a pluralistic, diverse society in an effective way to kind of decrease the backlash and misunderstanding? There were questions about, can we expect more updates? And also some of the same questions other groups had on language. Couldn't you have anticipated the problem with words like degenerate? That was more of a lament than a question. But it stimulated about 10 minutes of discussion, and it was really hard to bring the group back to like, are there any other questions? So, so the whole question of eugenics and, you know, how do we do that? And another part was, how do you assess Christianity's readiness for part 4? But I think that all has to do with outreach. And then there was a series of questions about the choices that were made around Adam and Eve. Why didn't they get thought adjusters until after they had sinned? And why did the Melchizedeks leave Adam and Eve after 7 years? And then a really different question was, with all the technology that's going on, AI, robots, high technology coming together, being able to write essays, will it come together in a singularity? Will that be a danger to us? If that is a danger, will we be removed from the planet? So that's a question nobody else had. And I mean, no other group has mentioned. Is there anything else you want us to know about how to better cooperate with our thought adjuster? I know you've already written a lot about that, but would you like to write some more about that? And let's see. Were the Jesus papers really an afterthought? Really? I mean, like, or was it just that they were doing it time sequentially and they were, you know, really focused on those earlier papers? How did the original 57 papers turn into the whole first 3 sections? And did the Jesus papers go through the same dialogue and question process as the other ones? And was the US just a staging group? I mean, were we a staging location, but really the book's going to take off in other locations? So that was what our group talked about. Okay.
Are we up to one last Zoom group?
I think you've got 2 more.
Do
Yeah,
we
that
have
would be
two?
ours. This is group 5. And I took down the questions and I'll just recite them as fast as I can. I think there might be, you know, vague overlap, but I mean, these are generally specific questions. The first one is, what do we need to do in the short term within the next 100 years that we are not doing currently? Another question is the timing right to turn part 4 or a section thereof into a movie or some other cinematic treatment? Questions 3 and 4 about the Lucifer Rebellion. How will the Lucifer Rebellion come to a close and when? And what should we look for to know that that's happening? Has the quarantine been changed in some way, even if the rebellion hasn't ended? When is the rebellion, or when are the rebellious personalities going to be taken off the planet so the planet can be free to move into the light? Another question was, general phenomena like channelings, galactic federation, the research of Dr. Michael Sala, who uncovered the secret space program and perceived that the frequency portals have been closed and that the Nazi vehicles from Fourth Reich have been taken away or quarantined. What is that all about? Good question. Is Enki returning? What about the Cedar race and Adamic DNA being restored? Why doesn't the UB go into more depth about some of that shady, business? Has there really been a turn with the status of Caligastia, and when can we see the adjudication happening? The next question was about thought adjusters. Are they constantly working with various groups on the planet to upgrade the consciousness so that we can raise the frequency to a higher level? Are there an unprecedented number of incarnated universal beings here at this time? And if so, why? The person who asked that said that her sense was that they are, but she'd like to ask, for more information. Here's a question about crop circles. Considering that they're so varied in their presentation, are they being produced by a bunch of different entities? And what can society learn from these messages? And then the last question was to Eve. Even though you and Adam had been prepared and primed for, quite a period before you arrived on this planet, why were you so not so resistant to Caligastia's temptation after you'd been on the planet for only, 100+ years? That's that.
Nice.
Thank you. And we now have time to hear from the two groups that we had in person. Was there anyone other group on Zoom that didn't report yet? All Zoom breakouts reported?
All 5.
Okay. So would the group at that end of the room be ready to read questions? Mark?
We were pleasantly disorganized. I tried to scribble. I'm trying to read my own writing, but we had about 18 or 19 questions.
Wow.
There is some duplication, but not too much.
Mark, would you be willing to turn that page over to keep me from having to rewrite what you wrote already? Or should
Turn the page.
To us.
Turn the page.
Hand it in?
When you're done. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But I'm gonna have to put it on the computer.
Yeah.
You won't read it. I'll put it on the computer first.
Oh, I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Question number 1, why did the Creator start life here for human before the surface of the earth was settled? Tornadoes, earthquakes, I've wondered that, and a lady in the study group one time answered that for me. What age will you be when you arrive on the mansion worlds? And what will you wear? Okay. Any exception to the rules prohibiting pets on the mansion worlds? Okay, that's a good question.
Thank you.
People get close to pets, don't they? Does, I don't know if I can read this right. Does communication with our thought adjuster get easier when we arrive on the mansion worlds? That's a great question. Thank you. Okay, next one. Why did Jesus appear to the Emmaus brothers on the walk going back home? You remember that story? Why did he appear to them? Okay, what happened to Jesus' grave cloths?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. What advice do you have for increasing readership in the present era on Urantia? Advice, we need advice, don't we? What is the nature and what?
And cause. Nature and cause.
And cause for the concept and traditions I see, for reincarnation in other religions. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a great question. Is there any channeling going on now on Earth? That's another one. Why did they not reveal more was another question. You probably all want to ask that, don't you? Why don't you tell us more? Okay, how does communication from midwayers differ from communication from schizophrenics? Did I get that right? That's a great question.
Don't ask me.
Next one, what capacities on Urantia are limiting the Urantia revelation?
What capacities?
Capacities. That's a great question. What do I need to achieve what do I need to do to achieve the third psychic circle? It's another great question. Somebody wants to be there, don't they? Let's see, what will we do first when we get there? When we learn we've survived? That's a great question. What are we going to do first when we learn we're awake? And next question, how much more advancement would our civilization be if we didn't have the Adamic default? How much more would we be advanced? And I'm working with prisoners, and one of them asked me a question, well, am I going to have to meet my victims? So for a person who's been in jail, that's a really important question, isn't it? Okay. And two more. When we no longer have war? Did I get that right?
When will we no longer?
Okay. And the last one, can you say when the quarantine will end? Somebody had to address that, didn't they? But these were great questions, I thought.
Thank you, Mark.
Did they think they had great questions when they actually didn't, and the midwayers rolled their eyes, and is the same thing happening now as they're watching us? We love our questions, and they're rolling their eyes.
They love our humor, too.
They love our humor, they must.
They love our brains too.
All right, we have one group reporting, and Trudy, are you our reporter?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
Okay, as everybody else, it seems, what is the status of the Lucifer Rebellion and the quarantine? They refer to something called the unknown mysteries that various beings in the book discuss. What are they? We need to know. Inquiring minds want to know. Why would they tell us about Divinington but not allow us to go there? What happens to one of our Urantia book believers who commits suicide? What about medically assisted death? What is Tabamancha's current assessment of our planet and civilization? In other words, how's the planet doing? Are humans allowed to hang out with other Urantia book readers on Mansonia 1? How did the creators mess up so badly when it comes to human decision making? What is the spiritual potential of the technology of the internet? Are we really going to help this planet survive the environmental problems we have? Are we going to get some divine intervention to help? Is there such a thing as actual signs to confirm that we are following God's will? What is the best, most effective way to bring the revelation to the planet? Revolution? No. What did our unseen friends do to, quote, associate circumstances? How do they get people in the right place at the right time? Is time travel possible? Did the midwayers appoint a lookout to cover the entry of the sleeping survivor secretly into the building? Can you give us more details about the first mansion world? Who on earth did Jesus visit between the time of his death and his resurrection? What advice do you have for preventing global war? How many sisters did Mary really have? Did Jesus have sex? Why were the apostles required to abandon their human families?
Great questions.
All right, thank you all. And now the floor is open for discussion of questions or whatever reflections this experience has created for you. Commentary.
much time do we have?
What's our ending time, Ken?
2:45, so.
We have till 2:45 for general
17
discussion.
17 minutes.
2:30.
That's awesome, Emily.
I think there's one in chat.
One hand, Darlene Satori has her hand up.
My question was, are there any plans for additional papers to be given to us inside of the 100 years of progress that would be important for us to know in this era, since we have so much technology?
Thank you. And if you have comments, keep them brief, but let's keep going with reflections or discussion.
Marion Hughes.
I would just like to say the answer to personality is, I like to say, your you-ness. That is how you will always be recognized, no matter how your form changes. We're going to change a lot of times, but our personality, we'll always know each other. Whoever asks that question, we will always know each other through our personalities. That's all.
Thank you.
Merit Horn.
Yeah, hi. I had another question. I got to my group late, so I didn't get a chance to ask it. But I really would like to ask the Divine Counselor, if he had the chance to write the foreword again, how would he change it?
Thank
Given
you.
what's happened over the last 65 years with it.
Yes,
Great, thanks.
Merritt did ask that, and I just forgot to scroll down my page. There were 2 remaining questions I hadn't read out when I was reporting. So sorry, Merritt. And
What's the other one?
What's the other one?
the other one was, okay, this is complicated. I have to press certain buttons to get to
Tell me about it.
page. Okay, here's the other one.
You're doing great.
How can I expand my own consciousness in the realm of the universe to be of greater service? The UB itself was a process that unfolded, resulting in the final printing. And our lives are sort of like an analogy of that. We're also a process. So basically, what is my path? That was the other question that I neglected to read out.
What is my past?
Thank you.
Path.
P-A-T-H. Yeah.
Help me with
Path,
the
right?
chat.
P-A-T-H.
Help me with the chat.
Stevens,
More questions or comments in the chat?
Oh, in the chat.
Stephen sent, raised his hand. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yes, I wanted to say, first of all, real deep gratitude to all of the planning and all of the putting together that you folks have done at First Society to make this Midwest conference such a workable organizational situation for all of us benefit. Also, the truth, I think, is that we wouldn't be asking the questions if it weren't implied that we can find the answers and they will be given to us. And I believe that with all my heart.
Thank you, Stephen.
Jim and Barbara, you want to go next?
Yes, Jim, Barbara.
Yeah, I want to kind of piggyback on Stephen. I mean, thank you all for this wonderful presentation and opportunity. I'm really humbled by how daunting this task was for the forum to come up with good questions and meaningful questions. I mean, we have the privilege of having 20/20 hindsight now to ask some of these questions.
Yeah.
But if you're forward thinking and wondering about things coming in the future, what a challenge it would be to, kind of orchestrate that. And there must have been a lot of give and take and a lot of back and forth between the higher celestials and the forum, to come up with these answers that they put in the book. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Barbara? Who's Barbara? Was there someone else?
Question down here when you're ready.
Oh, another question?
No, I mean, when you're ready to do this room, I have a question.
Go ahead, Rich.
Go
All
ahead.
right?
You get in the queue.
Oh, okay. So somebody had a question regarding Jesus' soul. What happened to it? My initial response to myself was it would be with Michael. But I'm wondering what anybody else, do you remember the question, first of all? And then what anybody else thinks about it?
Well, I have an answer for that satisfies me. I don't know if it satisfies anybody else. He didn't need a soul. He was probably developing one during his human life, but he didn't need one to transport to the mansion worlds. That's what the soul in essence is for. His thought adjuster personalized, so he didn't need one.
Okay, thank you.
Marion,
But did he have one?
Pardon me?
Did he have one?
That's a great question.
As a creator son?
It's mentioned twice.
No, as Jesus.
Yeah, as Jesus, as a human being here on earth.
It's mentioned a couple times in the book that he did. It uses the phrase Jesus' soul.
That's a good question, though.
I think it became part of his thought adjuster, who became the head of all the thought adjusters.
That could be.
But we also know it became part of the Supreme.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's good.
At his death, wouldn't it have been disassembled?
No, he was.
Who had the wrenches?
Andre has a question.
Might still be with Jesus, might be with him, might be part of him now. He is what do they call it, a master son. So maybe that's the difference. Maybe after they've gone through a life as a human being, they get souls, maybe.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, go ahead.
The Rancher book states that the gift of Jesus Christ upon his ascending was the dedication to all of mankind on the planet Earth, the possibility of access to his mind. His thought adjuster was a bestowal on the entire planet.
Well, it's the spirit of truth.
Somebody muted you.
Yeah, we lost him.
Jim and Barbara, do you have another question?
No, I have a statement. The human perfected soul of Jesus is of the spirit of truth. And that's the part that he bestowed upon the planet. So we have access to his human perfected soul. The first functioning of the spirit of truth is when we get our thought adjusters.
I want to get rid of it.
And that's what I was going to say. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Rich Sachs, you're up next.
I'm looking at the paragraph, so when Jesus says, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit, and then they say they don't really fully understand the meaning, and they give a fairly long explanation, and I'm just thinking that Jesus in this moment is dying on the cross, and he wants to make a statement in general that people would understand, like humans would understand a comment like, into your hands I commend my spirit. It might not be really that much deeper than that. Just the idea that he wanted to make a statement, and it's an appropriate statement to make.
Statement of faith then.
Thank you.
Andre, you're next.
We get the closest answer to that in 188.38, page 2015 in the single column book. Subsection 3, the acquired spirit identity of the man of Nazareth, which was built up during his lifetime in the flesh, that is his soul, but they call it spirit identity because he achieved essentially paradise level spirituality in the life of the flesh, or at least the end of Havona, first circle spirituality. First, by the direct efforts of his thought adjuster, and later by his own perfect adjustment between the physical necessities and the spiritual requirements of the ideal mortal existence as it was affected by his never-ceasing choice of the Father's will, must have been consigned to the custody of the Paradise Father. That's what they speculate, the midwayers. Whether or not this spirit reality returned to become part of the resurrected personality, we do not know, but we believe it did, to experience further growth, probably. But there are those in the universe who hold that this sole identity of Jesus now reposes in the bosom of the Father, to be subsequently, and notice they clarify what they mean by saying this sole identity. So they mean his soul. To be subsequently released for leadership of the Nebadon core of the finality in their undisclosed destiny in connection with the uncreated universes of the unorganized realms of outer space. So there's speculation about what this soul identity might have as a job later on, to actually be essentially repersonalized as a new person that emulates the character of the master going out into the outer space levels to lead the Nebadon core of the finality. The interesting thing that is also there that is not alluded to anywhere else in the book is the once phrase, Nebadon core of the finality. Does that imply that we all return to our local universe eventually and start out to the outer space levels from there, following perhaps this repersonalized soul entity of the master?
Yeah, thanks. That was a good clarification.
Thank you so much, Andre.
That's good. Anything on chat? That's all the questions at the moment.
Okay.
Yes, it is
I have one
believed that.
more.
One more.
I have one more. Does somebody else have one more?
No.
Just me.
Go ahead.
No, please. I've asked so many. Go ahead.
Marvin raised his hand. No, it was just dovetailing on Andre's what Andre said, and that Jesus will be leading us into the ultimate. There's a sentence in there that says that when we go into the ultimate level, that he will continue to be he will lead us. We will be working with him.
And possibly the creative mother spirit as well, as part of the speculation.
Well, oh yeah, absolutely. The pair, absolutely.
Good point. Yeah.
Great.
Marvin Garwin. Marvin, you're up.
Yeah. First of all, I want to echo Stephen's comment and saying thank you to all of you for putting together this really wonderful day of recollection and bringing together all these memories and really according profound respect and appreciation to our predecessors. Thank you for doing that. And then I just popped something into the chat box in relation to the question of where is personality during the time intervening between death and repersonalization. They say the records are being held by the archangels, but there is this definitive statement of lack of knowledge at the end of the paragraph. And I don't recollect who's speaking in paper 112, but they say, as to the exact whereabouts of mortal personality during the time intervening between death and survival, we do not know. So in relation to that question that was asked, they don't know. I mean, they could speculate the personality was in some fashion returned to the bosom of the Father, the source, and with the Father, the source of all personality. But they don't know where the actual person is during the sleep of transition. So
Thank you.
anyways, that was my thought.
Good. Thank you so much. I see someone else who's up. Anyone?
Me?
Rich, go ahead.
So there was a question regarding rebels and their detention on this planet. I don't know if the person recalls asking that. If I'm wrong about it, jump in, please. But my thinking is that they're not detained on this planet. They're detained on maybe Satania, but asking for anybody's input.
Prison worlds?
Pardon?
A prison world.
A prison world.
The world of the Father.
Caligastia is still here.
Caligastia is still here?
And
Yeah.
Dalagastia,
Where?
Roaming around.
roaming around.
At the mall of America.
With no power.
With no what?
Valley.
Good influence.
He's the only one that's here, only one.
Unless we pursue it.
Unless we invite him.
Okay. Thank you.
That'd be one question I've asked. Why did they leave him, the only one here? Why didn't they take him too? I've been wondering about that for a long time.
It must be in his best interests.
It's Cal and Dal.
Cal and Dell.
So it's interesting that they're very clear that, you know, the Ancients of Days aren't going to act until any known and unknown sympathy for the devil still exists. And on this planet, we broadcast songs about sympathy for the devil every day on our radio waves. And there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of known still going on. So I think the planet's got a long way to go still.
Oh, boy.
Thank you, Tamara.
Richard Jernigan, you're up next. Since I've got the script here, I have a question that I'm curious about because today it was I was informed that the Jesus papers appeared as early as 1935 and were being read and reviewed. So if that's the case, there's that one passage about status of individual Jews that shows up after Jesus has made a declaration in the temple. And I was wondering if that was in that original 1935 or if that came later. And if anybody knows, I mean,
Because
a hard question, but if anybody would know if that was appeared in the first draft.
I understand the question.
I think I understand the question. I don't think we have an answer. I would point out that the Forum and Contact Commission record about reading Part 4 in 1935 is a fact. However, the Jesus papers of the Part 4 as a part is not dated. So there may be parts of Part 4 that possibly, in a sense, were written a long time ago. But for whatever reason, there's not a date on Part 4. But we do know that the first reading of Part 4 took place in 1935. That's all we know. And I don't think we have an answer to that question for that reason. I can't think of one that I've seen anywhere so far. Now, given that we do have missing papers, and perhaps they will show up and answer questions.
Really?
Missing papers.
Oh, yes. Well, this is human history. I've learned from historians that all historians have this problem. Records somehow aren't kept the way they should. Now, I would say, because I was here, that Christy and Marion and a lot of the people in 75 and 76, I've never seen better records kept. But there was a major disappearance of records in 1979, and some of them haven't been recovered.
But you don't mean papers
You're
from
not
the book.
talking about book papers.
Oh, I mean history.
Oh.
History.
Oh.
Like,
Oh.
I mean history. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be clear. It's such a. Yeah, I will tell you. I haven't said this yet, but I want to say to all historians of Urantia Revelation, Urantia book, all of the historians, I can relate to your struggles and challenges because it's hard to write high quality history without all the pieces and all the data, and it takes a lot of work to do good history. So I'm very grateful myself to all who have made efforts at history for the Urantia book and the Urantia Revelation. It's hard work, but yes, there are a few files, let me call it that, not papers of the book. That's not a problem.
You said
It's-
papers.
Yeah, did I say papers? By papers, I mean papers other people have written.
Scraps of paper.
Yeah, paper, hard copy paper disappeared.
Post-it
That's all we had in 79. But I have hopes that whatever those papers are, if someone takes them and wants to return them, that they will. We just don't know. But so there's more to be discovered as time history wears on in the Urantia movement. But a lot of it comes from files of former forum members or trustees of Urantia Foundation, like Tom Kendall had quite a few files that were duplicates of what was here. We're missing some originals, but we found copies of many of these various documents. Let's call them documents, but not papers of the book.
We're at the end of the time for this segment. There is one more hand, Rich, who had spoken earlier. Is it brief, Rich, or should we come back to it later?
It's brief. Just I heard about when will Caligastia be removed, and I know that the book says Lucifer was removed with the fourth epical revelation, Jesus of Nazareth. Satan was interned with the fifth epical revelation, this book. So these major events of that type seem to take place when an epical revelation occurs specifically on this planet. So maybe either when they really begin the real trials of those that are rebels, the real trials, whatever that means, by the Ancients of Days, that's when Caligastia would be removed. Or if there's a sixth epical revelation on this planet, certainly at that time it appears that Caligastia would be removed. And I don't know if Caligastia is present or not. They don't really say that.
I think there's a greater possibility that we may be looking down the road a ways for a magisterial mission.
Thank you so much. And that would be a great comment to take our next break, because we end with the future and our destiny. And that's sort of a forward-looking comment that you just made. Thank you so much.